The road doesn't warn you when it turns against you. One moment, everything feels normal. The next, silence takes over, and something unseen steps in. No witnesses, no second chances, just a single decision that changes everything forever. Across deserts, highways, forests, and forgotten towns, these stories begin the same way. Ordinary people, ordinary plans, and a place so isolated that once something goes wrong, there's no one left to hear it. And when help is hours away, survival becomes a matter of seconds. What follows aren't just disappearances or crimes. These are moments where reality slipped, fear took control, and for some, the highway stretched endlessly into the darkness, a thin strip of asphalt cutting through the vast emptiness of the Australian outback. Out here, distance didn't just mean miles, it meant isolation in its purest form. No streetlights, no nearby homes, no quick help if something went wrong. Just long, silent stretches where even the wind felt distant. That's exactly where Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees found themselves in July of 2001. They had been traveling for months, living the kind of life most people only dream about. Backpacking across countries, open roads, breathtaking landscapes, and a sense of freedom that felt almost limitless. That evening, the sky had already begun to dim as they drove along the Stewart Highway, one of the most isolated roads on Earth. The kind of road where you could drive for hours without seeing another vehicle. The kind of road where, if something happened, you were truly on your own. At first, nothing felt unusual. Then Joanne noticed it. Headlights. Far behind them, but steady. Watching. Following. At first, it didn't raise alarm. Another vehicle on such a long road wasn't impossible, just rare. They assumed it would pass them eventually. That's what most drivers did out here. The glare from the headlights grew stronger, filling their mirrors, making it harder to see. The vehicle behind them, a white pickup truck with a green canopy, didn't overtake. It lingered, matched their speed, stayed just far enough to feel intentional. That's when unease began to settle in. Still, they kept driving, because what else could they do? Then suddenly the truck pulled up beside them. A man inside gestured urgently, pointing toward the back of their van. His movements were sharp, insistent. Something was wrong, he seemed to say. Something with their vehicle. Peter slowed down. Joanne didn't like it. Something about the situation didn't feel right. The way the man had followed them. The way he didn't just pass. The way he insisted. But Peter saw it differently. Out here, people helped each other. That was the unspoken rule of remote roads. And in that moment, everything changed. Peter stepped out of the van, walking toward the stranger. The night had fully settled now, wrapping the scene in darkness. The only light came from the vehicles themselves, casting long, distorted shadows across the empty road. The man explained there were sparks coming from the exhaust. It sounded reasonable, even helpful. Peter moved to the back of the van to check. Joanne stayed inside, heart racing, that same uneasy feeling refusing to go away. But she followed Peter's instructions, revving the engine so he could inspect it. Then it happened. A loud crack shattered the silence. For a split second, it didn't register. It could have been anything. The van backfiring, a mechanical noise. But it wasn't. Before Joanne could even process it, the situation spiraled. The man was suddenly there, at her door, inside her space, overwhelming, aggressive, fast. Everything blurred together in a matter of seconds. Panic replaced confusion. Fear replaced hesitation. Peter was gone. Just gone. No voice, no movement, no sign of him anywhere. Joanne didn't even have time to react to that realization because now she was the target. The man forced his way in, trying to restrain her, trying to silence her. But fear does something powerful. It sharpens instinct. And Joanne fought back. Her resistance bought her seconds. And out here, seconds meant everything. She was dragged toward the truck, forced, terrified, alone. Inside, she noticed fragments, details that didn't make sense at the time but would later become crucial. A dog in the vehicle, the smell of the interior, the layout. Her mind, even in panic, was trying to remember, because somewhere deep down she knew, if she survived this, those details might be the only thing that mattered. Then, a moment, a single opportunity. The man stepped away, and Joanne ran. No plan, no direction, just movement. She threw herself into the darkness, into the bushes, into whatever cover she could find. Branches scratched against her skin, the ground uneven beneath her feet, but none of it mattered. She just needed to disappear. And she did. Hidden in silence, barely breathing, she listened. The man searched. Close. Too close. Each second stretched endlessly as she waited, frozen, hoping not to be found. But even then, she didn't move. Not immediately. Because out here, trust could get you killed. When she finally stepped out, the road was empty again, just like before. But everything had changed. Peter was nowhere to be seen, and deep down she already knew he wasn't coming back. Joanne ran, down the same highway that had moments ago felt like freedom, now turned into something else entirely. Every passing second carried the weight of what had just happened. Every step was driven by adrenaline, by survival, by the need to reach someone, anyone. Eventually, headlights appeared again. This time, salvation. A road train driver stopped, pulling her to safety, taking her to Barrow Creek, the nearest outpost of help in a place where help was never guaranteed. By the time authorities were contacted, hours had already passed. And out there, hours change everything. When police finally reached the scene the next morning, the vast emptiness told its own story. There were signs of struggle, evidence of violence. The abandoned van moved from its original position. But Peter Falconio? Gone. No body, no trace. Just silence, stretching endlessly across the outback. And the terrifying realization that somewhere in that emptiness, the truth was still waiting. Morning didn't bring answers. It only made the silence louder. As the first light spread across the outback, the search began. But this wasn't a normal search. There were no nearby towns to canvass, no witnesses to question, no cameras on every corner. Just miles upon miles of open land where anything could disappear without a trace. And that's exactly what it felt like had happened to Peter. Police combed through the area where Joanne said the attack took place. The ground told part of the story. Disturbed dirt, scattered signs of movement. Then they found the van, not where it should have been. It had been moved roughly 80 meters from the original spot, almost as if someone had tried to reposition the scene. That alone changed everything. This wasn't random. This wasn't chaotic. This was controlled. Inside the van, investigators worked carefully, collecting anything that could speak when witnesses could not. The gear stick, surfaces, Joanne's restraints, each one carried the possibility of truth. The same unknown profile appeared on the gear stick and on the restraints used against Joanne. That single detail shifted the entire case. Whoever attacked them hadn't just passed through. He had control of the vehicle, control of the situation, control of everything. But even with that, one question still overshadowed all others. Where was Peter? Search teams expanded outward, pushing deeper into the surrounding terrain. Aboriginal trackers joined the effort, reading the land in ways few others could, picking up on patterns, disturbances, subtle signs invisible to untrained eyes. Still, nothing. No footprints leading away, no sign of a body, no indication that Peter had survived long enough to escape. It was as if the outback itself had swallowed him whole. Meanwhile, Joanne became the center of everything, the only witness, the only survivor. And instead of being protected, she became scrutinized. At first, it was subtle. Investigators needed clarity, and trauma doesn't always give clean answers. Her memory was fragmented, details blurred, timelines uncertain. That's normal in extreme situations. But in a case like this, normal quickly turns into suspicious. Then the media got involved, and everything spiraled. Headlines questioned her story. Commentators picked apart her behavior. People who had never experienced even a fraction of what she went through suddenly became experts, analyzing her reactions, her tone, her inconsistencies. She's unreliable. She's hiding something. She knows more than she's saying. The narrative shifted, from victim to suspect, and it happened fast. Joanne wasn't just dealing with the trauma of that night anymore. She was now defending herself against a world that had already begun to doubt her. Every interview, every statement, every appearance became another opportunity for people to dissect her. But trauma doesn't perform well under pressure. It fractures, it distorts. And the more she was pushed, the harder it became for her to hold everything together. Yet despite all of it, she stayed consistent about one thing. There was a man, a white pickup, a dog inside, and a moment that changed everything. Investigators needed more than that. They needed something tangible, something that could turn a story into a suspect. So they went looking for patterns. CCTV footage from nearby roadhouses became critical. In a place as isolated as this, even the smallest sighting could mean everything. Vehicles passing through, people stopping for fuel, anyone matching the description Joanne provided. And then, finally, a break. A man was seen on camera at a service station in Alice Springs, just hours after the attack. The timing lined up. The appearance matched closely enough to raise eyebrows. It wasn't proof, but it was something. From there, police shifted focus to the vehicle, a white Toyota pickup with a green canopy. It wasn't a common sight in cities, but in rural Australia it wasn't exactly rare either. Still, they built a list. 36 men, 36 possible matches. Each one had to be checked. Each one had to be ruled out. And then, one name stood out. Bradley John Murdoch. When investigators looked at his photo, and then looked at Joanne's composite sketch, the similarity was impossible to ignore. It wasn't vague. It wasn't questionable. It was striking, too close to dismiss. Murdoch was brought in for questioning, and for a moment, it felt like the case might finally break open. But it didn't. There wasn't enough. No direct evidence tying him to the crime. No DNA collected from him at the time. No immediate link that could hold up under scrutiny. So he walked, just like that. The strongest lead they had, gone. And with him, the case slipped right back into uncertainty. But Joanne didn't hesitate. When presented with a lineup of photographs, she pointed directly at Murdoch. No second guessing, no hesitation. It was him. She was sure of it. That identification kept the investigation alive, but it also raised the stakes. Because now, if they were right, they weren't just looking for answers anymore. They were looking for a man who had already proven what he was capable of, and had managed to disappear once before. Months passed. The outback remained silent. Peter was still missing, and Murdoch? Nowhere to be found. It wasn't until nearly a year later, August 2002, that things shifted again. Murdoch was picked up, not for this case, but on an unrelated matter. And this time, investigators didn't make the same mistake. They took his DNA. When the results came back, there was no ambiguity, no uncertainty. The DNA found on Joanne's restraints, on the van's gear stick, matched Murdoch with overwhelming statistical certainty. Not just likely, virtually impossible to be anyone else. The kind of match that doesn't leave room for doubt. At that point, the case transformed completely. This wasn't a mystery anymore. This was a manhunt that had finally caught its target. Murdoch was charged with Peter's murder, even without a body, even without knowing exactly where Peter had gone. Because sometimes, the evidence speaks louder than what's missing. And in this case, it was deafening. The trial wasn't just about proving what happened on that highway. It was about proving it without a body. And that changes everything. Because in most cases, a body tells the story, how it happened, where it happened, sometimes even why. But here, there was nothing. No remains, no final confirmation, just evidence, fragments, and a silence that had lasted for years. The prosecution had to build a case strong enough to stand on its own. And they did it, piece by piece. First, the samples taken from the gear stick, the restraints, and Joanne's clothing all pointed to one person, Bradley Murdoch. The probability wasn't just high, it was astronomical. The kind of number that doesn't leave room for coincidence. Then came the timeline. Murdoch was placed in the area. His movements aligned with the attack. Witnesses had seen a vehicle matching his. CCTV footage supported it. And Joanne, despite everything she had been through, never wavered in identifying him. But the defense pushed back hard. No body, no weapon directly tied to the crime, no eyewitness to Peter's final moments. They argued that without those elements, the case was incomplete. That doubt still existed. That maybe, just maybe, there was another explanation. But the prosecution didn't need maybe. They needed certainty. And they found it in the pattern. Murdoch wasn't a random man caught in unfortunate circumstances, a clear hostility toward travelers. a mindset that aligned disturbingly well with what had happened on that isolated road. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about behavior, intent, opportunity. And when all of it came together, the narrative became impossible to ignore. He followed them. He waited for the right moment. He created a reason to make them stop. And once they did, there was no way out. Inside the courtroom, Joanne faced him. The man who had taken everything from her in a matter of minutes. The man responsible for a night that would follow her for the rest of her life. And despite the fear, the trauma, the years of being questioned and doubted, she stood there, composed, steady, focused. Not the unreliable witness the media had painted her to be, but the key to the entire case. Her testimony wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real. And sometimes, that matters more. Because real doesn't need to be flawless, it just needs to be true. After weeks of arguments, evidence, and tension, it all came down to one moment. December 13th, 2005. The verdict: guilty. Bradley Murdoch was convicted of Peter Falconio's murder and the assault and attempted abduction of Joanne Lees, sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 28 years. For many, it felt like justice, but not closure, because even with a conviction, one critical piece was still missing. Peter, where was he? What exactly happened in those final moments after that single gunshot echoed through the outback? Murdoch never said. Not during the trial, not after the conviction, not even years later. He maintained his innocence to the very end, refusing to give any information that could lead to Peter's remains. For Peter's family, that silence became its own kind of punishment. Because without a body, there's no goodbye, no final resting place, no true ending, just questions that never stop. Search efforts continued long after the trial. Investigators combed through vast stretches of land, following leads, rechecking areas, hoping for something, anything, that could bring answers. But the outback doesn't give things back easily. Time passed, years turned into decades, and still, nothing. Then, in June 2025, something changed, but not in the way anyone had hoped. Bradley Murdoch died, at the age of 67, inside prison, and with him, whatever he knew, gone. Any chance of finding Peter through a confession, a map, a single hint, disappeared in that moment. For the family, it was like losing him all over again. Because now, the truth wasn't just hidden, it was buried forever. Authorities didn't give up. A $500,000 reward was announced for any credible information leading to the discovery of Peter's remains. Leads still come in, tips are still investigated, but so far, nothing has brought them closer. And that's the part that lingers. Because this case isn't just about what happened, it's about what never will. A young couple chasing a dream, a single stop on an empty road, a decision that took seconds, with consequences that lasted a lifetime. Joanne survived, but survival came with scars that never fully fade. Peter didn't. And somewhere, in that vast, silent stretch of land, the final piece of his story still waits, unseen, unanswered, and maybe unknowable forever. They were only supposed to be out for a few hours. That's what made it so unsettling. No warning, no argument, no sign that anything was about to go wrong. Just a normal evening, simple plans, and two people who had no idea they were about to walk straight into something they couldn't escape. Christopher Newsom and Channon Christian were young, full of life, and like most couples at that stage, completely wrapped up in each other. Their world was small in the best way. Shared laughs, late-night drives, casual plans that didn't need much thought. January 6th, 2007 was supposed to be one of those nights. A birthday party, friends, nothing unusual. But plans shifted slightly. Channon stayed back at a friend's apartment, waiting. Christopher had a few things to take care of before picking her up. It was casual, unremarkable, the kind of small adjustment no one thinks twice about. Sometime after 8 p.m. he arrived. They left together, and from that moment on, they vanished. At first, no one panicked. They were young. It was the weekend. People stay out late, phones die, Plans change. It happens. But hours passed. Then more. Calls went unanswered. Messages unread. Still, there was hesitation to assume the worst. Because sometimes, reality is easier to delay than to confront. Until the next day came, and nothing changed. Channon's mother tried calling again. No response. That wasn't like her. Not even close. Christopher's family hadn't heard from him either. That uneasy feeling started to grow. Quiet at first, then louder with every failed attempt to reach them. Something wasn't right. By January 7th, concern turned into action. If they had left together, why was one car still there and the other missing? Still, uncertainty held people back. Maybe they had gone somewhere else. Maybe plans had changed. But when Channon didn't show up for work, that was the moment everything shifted. She wasn't the type to just disappear. That's when the families got the police involved. And even then, time slipped away. Because technically, they were adults. No immediate signs of foul play, no confirmed emergency. Just two missing people and a system that needed more before it reacted faster. So the families did what they could. They started tracing her phone, following the last signal, and it led them somewhere unexpected, Cherry Street. Around 2 a.m. they found it, Channon's car, abandoned. That alone was enough to send a chill through anyone looking at it, but it was what was inside that made it worse. Things were missing. Personal items that didn't just disappear without reason. Photos, small belongings, pieces of her life that should have been there, but weren't. The seats had been pushed back, too far back, not how she drove. The interior was dirty, mud everywhere, completely out of character for someone who kept her car clean. And then, something even stranger, a pack of cigarettes. Neither of them smoked. At that point, there was no more denial. This wasn't random. This wasn't normal. This was something else entirely. Police returned to the scene, now treating it for what it clearly was, a crime. Inside the car, they found an envelope, fingerprints on it. Not Channon's, not Christopher's, someone else. And just like that, the investigation had its first real lead. Those prints led to an address just 2 blocks away, a house that didn't belong to either victim, a name no one recognized, but a connection that couldn't be ignored. When officers arrived, the house appeared empty, quiet, still. But something about it didn't sit right. They went inside, room by room, carefully, methodically, until they reached the kitchen. And that's where everything changed. Inside a garbage container, they found her, Channon. The search was over, but not in the way anyone had hoped. The moment officers made that discovery, the entire case shifted from missing persons to something far darker. Because if she was here, then where was Christopher? That answer had already come, hours earlier, but no one had connected it yet. On January 7th, a railroad employee had reported something disturbing along the tracks. A body, burned, unrecognizable at first glance. It wasn't until later that it was confirmed. Christopher Newsom. What had happened between the moment they left that apartment and the moment they were found was something no one could have imagined. And the worst part? They hadn't just been taken by one person. There were 5. 5 individuals who crossed paths with them at the worst possible moment. 5 people who turned a normal night into something beyond comprehension. The investigation moved quickly after that. The fingerprints, the house, the connections. One name led to another, and before long, authorities had identified the group responsible. LaMarcus Davidson, Eric Boyd, Latalvis Cobbins, George Thomas, Vanessa Coleman. Each one tied to the crime, each one playing a role. And as details began to surface, it became clear. This wasn't random. They had been targeted, taken, dragged into something they never saw coming. The trials that followed exposed just how brutal those hours had been. The kind of details that stay with you long after the case is over. The kind of reality that reminds you how quickly things can spiral when the wrong people enter the picture. One decision, one place, one moment. That's all it took. Justice did come, eventually. Sentences were handed down. Some life, some less. Years of legal battles, retrials, and courtroom tension followed. But no verdict can undo what happened. No sentence can return what was lost. And for the families, justice and peace are never the same thing. Because some stories don't end, they just stop. And that's what makes them stay with you. If this story stayed with you even for a moment, don't just move on. Hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that reveal what really happens when things go wrong in the worst possible places. And I want you to think about this. If you were in that situation, would you have noticed the warning signs in time? Or would it have felt just like any other normal night? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.